This is Wade Harvey at idealprogrammer.com. I wanted to take a quick minute to talk about the philosophy behind the website, because I think this might help to motivate you when you're watching the videos. So today I want to talk about these 6 topics. What is an ideal? And second, I want to talk about that there's a tension between actual objects and their ideal, and how this tension can be described by field theory. Third, I want to show that we can reduce tension by taking action. Fourth, we'll look at how the concept of tension between actual and ideal applies to our individual self, metaphorically. And fifth, we'll look at we'll see that the tension between actuals and ideals is actually the strongest source of tension in ourselves. And sixth, we'll wrap up by looking at how the website provides us with a mental picture of an ideal programmer, and gives us actions that we can take to make ourselves more like that ideal. So we'll start out with number 1. And when you go back into the history of ideas and the philosophy of ideas, what you find is a lot of talk about ideals. There's the ideal of equality, justice. There's all these political ideals, religious ideals, ideals of art, beauty, and so forth. But what is an ideal? Well, an ideal is not anything out in the world. It's just a mental picture in our minds that we have of what an object ought to be. The second point is that there's a tension between actual objects and their ideals. And here's an example with a Greek Parthenon, but we can take a more concrete example of our car in our garage, and we see, when we look at the actual jalopy that's out there, we see that it's different than the ideal picture of the perfect car that we have in our brains. And there's a tension that arises when the actual doesn't match up to the ideal. And this applies to every individual object in the universe. And this tension is like the tension between the north and south pole of a magnet. Now, many years ago, Michael Faraday used field theory to try to describe the tension between the north and south poles of a magnet. In field theory, there's a feature or a property called bipolar, where there's 2 poles and there's a tension between those 2 poles. And when we're talking about actuals and ideals, the 2 poles are the actual object, the jalopy in our garage, and the ideal, the perfect car picture in our brain. And when those don't match, there's a tension, just like the tension between the 2 poles of a magnet. Now we can reduce the tension by performing action to transform the actual object, the old jalopy, into the ideal. Now this action needs to be massive. It can't just be, anybody can do just a little action. It needs to be organized. If we're not focused, we'll can take a lot of action and not get anywhere. It needs to be intelligent. A lot of dumb action doesn't get us anywhere. And it needs to be executed according to a plan to keep us on track. Down through the ages, there's been a lot of debate about whether providence exists, and the debate has never really been solved. But there can be no doubt that providence does exist within each one of us. When we take action to transform something from its actual state into its ideal, because this is exactly what providence would do if it was acting in the world right now. It would change things from their actual state to the ideal. So that resolves the debate, at least on the individual level. The fifth point is that this idea of actual versus ideal, it can metaphorically be applied to our individual self. There's a tension between who we actually are and who we ideally want to be. And this is actually the strongest source of tension in ourselves. And by strongest, I'm not saying that it's the most intense. No, I'm saying it's the most enduring. Other basic needs can temporarily be more intense, but this tension between our actual self and our ideal is something that keeps coming up over time, and is in that sense it's stronger than any other need. When our basic needs of anger are frustrated, we can become angry and blurt something out, and then later on we'll feel bad. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. When the stronger source of tension comes back up between our actual self and our ideal. When we're hungry, we can do things that temporarily are against being our ideal self. When we're sleepy, we can be grumpy, and when we're in financial stress. These are temporary strong sources of tension, but they do not override the strongest source of tension, which is to become our ideal self. And finally, point number 6 is that the website provides a mental picture of what an ideal programmer would be, and it gives us action steps that we can take to become more ideal. It gives us a mental picture by watching the videos. We see 50 or 100 Microsoft presenters, and they are the best in the field, and from watching those 50 or 100 people, we can abstract out a picture of what the ideal programmer might be like. And then we can use the sister website called Progress Monitor to allow us to monitor our progress in taking action to transform ourselves to become more like the ideal.